Good morning and welcome to the Business Hour. I'm Ron Comacho, your host, and today our business at hand is the business of healthy forest and healthy tree canopies, primarily in Georgia, but much of what we're going to talk about applies to the rest of the country and for that matter to cities around the world, simply because trees have become more important than ever. Unfortunately, we're witnessing the decimation by fire to trees in the western United States, and that's really sad. But there are ways, and we'll address some of those, where you can do the kinds of things that help to keep your community forest healthier, and also things that you can do to replenish trees. And I'm pleased to have as my guest Mary Lynne Beckley, the Executive Director of the Georgia Tree Council, and Seth Hawkins, a community forester with the Georgia Forestry Commission. Welcome, Mary Lynne and Seth.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I appreciate that you're taking the time to talk about this because, as I said, I think it's becoming increasingly important to most, if not all, communities to have a healthy forest, which means you'll have better environmental health, better wildlife health, and so there's multiple benefits to having a healthy forest. And I make a reference to tree canopy. They're related, but of course the forest goes beyond just the trees, and we'll be talking about that. Mary Lynne, let's start by having you offer an overview of the Georgia Tree Council by sharing a little bit about the history and the mission and the programs, who your members are, who some of the leadership is, and a little later we're going to be talking about the upcoming tree conference and trade show that you'll be hosting on November 7th at the Atlanta Evergreen Marriott Conference Resort. So we won't forget to touch on that. But let's start with the background and the mission of the organization.
Okay. So the Georgia Tree Council was actually established back in 1988, originally as the Georgia Urban Forest Council. And we changed our name recently this year for clarification, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But we are still Georgia's Urban Forest Council, and an Urban Forest Council is we're a nonprofit organization. Again, established in 1988 by a group of dedicated citizens who saw a need for Georgia's urban forest issues to be addressed. Around that time, development was taking off, trees were coming down, people were starting to get concerned, and so the Urban Forest Council was formed in partnership with the Georgia Forestry Commission. And in fact, I have the original press release where they talk about how they wanted to reach out to developers and city officials and leaders in the community and educate about how important trees are to communities. Now, the phrase urban forest, let me just explain what that is. First of all, urban technically means a human settlement. Large or small, it doesn't mean a big city. It can be a small village, a small town, anywhere there are people living, working, playing, doing business, going to school. That's an urban setting, and the trees there are the urban forest. So it can be, city of Atlanta. It can be a suburban neighborhood. It can be a very small town. But if there are trees there, then that is an urban forest. So it's trees and people coexisting. So our council has been around for 31 years now. Again, we do work closely with the Georgia Forestry Commission. They are our partners in education and all sorts of projects. And so we are statewide. We do have a membership program. You can we have individuals, organizations, businesses, cities and counties who are members, and some perks go along with that membership. But we also, you don't have to be a member to participate in our programming. It's just a program that we have. We do educational programs around the state. We do quarterly programs, and these are on urban forestry issues. tree care, tree management, planting with trees, trees as green stormwater infrastructure, those kind of topics. And we also do some arborist certification review classes for those who are wanting to train to become arborists. And then at the very end of the year, we do our statewide annual conference, which we'll talk about in just a minute.
I want to go back and emphasize that your roots, so to speak, are in focusing on urban settings. And Seth, you can speak to this as well. I mentioned that there was a growing interest and importance attributed to urban forests, simply because we know that there are environmental health benefits, but also there's economic value.
Oh, yeah.
And when you have development in an urban setting and there is any sort of removal of trees, whether it's on a small scale or large scale clear cutting, all of a sudden the landscape is literally and figuratively changed. And what people have come to realize is that even in a state like Georgia, which is heavily forested, people say they fly in all the time and they say, wow, where's the city? I had a woman actually say that to me. She flew in from California this very last weekend, and she said, I saw all the trees and I was wondering, where are all the people? And she said, as the plane got lower, I could see that it was just a lot of trees in the urban area. But what's also true is that there's large swatches of clear-cut areas as well. You can't have population growth without structures. And people began to realize that they were losing some of their trees, and that the trees probably first and foremost were aesthetically pleasing. I know that I moved to the city of Sandy Springs, which is here in North Metro Atlanta, in large part because I liked the way that streets looked, which are much like, as we talked just before the program, like other sections of Atlanta and Charlotte and Birmingham and Macon and all over the southeast. We're lucky to have a lot of vegetation and a lot of trees. But as you lose them, you're changing the complexion literally of the communities. Right.
I always say we can't take our eye off the ball. And we do have a lot of trees here in the Metro Atlanta area. But one thing that the council and the commission teaches is that you must, if you're building, if you're growing, if you have a lot of development, you got to keep the trees on the table in the planning process as well. You can build with trees. You can we're here in Sandy Springs, and the UPS headquarters is not too far away. Couple of, I guess it's been 15 or more years ago, when they built that headquarters, and it literally is as if they dropped that building within the forest. They were so careful in bringing in arborists and landscape architects and all sorts of people who could help them preserve that forest around them. And what a lovely setting it has been for their employees to be able to look out the window and see those trees, or either go out and take a break, and sit among the trees. It can be done, and the good thing is I think more and more developers are learning that people want trees in their new residential communities, in their office settings. And so building with trees is very important. We have to keep those benefits for our citizens.
I had a conversation, in fact, also just days ago, with a developer who's building, a home builder who's building within our subdivision. And some of the neighbors noticed that a few more trees were being taken down. They were expecting that to happen early on, and there were some meetings at the city hall where they had a discussion about hopefully you can preserve as many trees as possible. Then when we started to see some of the specimen large heritage trees, big diameter trees being taken down, some of us were concerned, and I called, and I think this developer really is very sympathetic with the plight of losing trees in an urban setting. But of course, his task is to build a home or homes. There are multiple homes on this lot, and the footprint of the home takes up a lot of trees. spaced where there were trees. But as you said, UPS, who received an award from the Fulton County Environmental Commission that many people know I'm a part of, they received an award for being exactly what you described, a corporate Fortune 100 company that wanted to have as small a footprint on that property as possible, so that they not only looked like they dropped it in from the air, so that they built in and among the trees, but they also didn't want to affect the creek. There's a creek that goes under the building, in fact, Now they aid that flow with some pumping, but nevertheless, the creek is there. And they also floated some balloons to the heights of the buildings in advance and looked at it from Georgia 400, because they didn't want to be above the tree canopy as well. So they really are nestled into that site. And, boy, isn't that a great example for larger structures? Actually, Seth, we could just segue, or Mary Lynne, you could tell us about if you know there are cities that are doing anything similar to that commercially around Georgia. And that's a prime example for sure. But are there a growing number of developers that are conscious of, leaving a smaller footprint?
We have our awards program also that we incorporate in our conference every year, and we consistently give out our Outstanding New Development Award or our Outstanding Business Award. And I will tell you, this year our awards are going to two businesses. One is Gables Residential, who has built, they are very, sustainability is one of their principles, and they have built an apartment building out in Vinings, Gables Vinings, and what they have done is also, when they took down trees, they took the wood, they worked with a company called U-Tree, and U-Tree took the timber and sawed it, milled it, planed it, all those words, and they're incorporating that wood back into their building. So there's one example of someone being a little more sustainable with their building. It's a different kind of example than UPS. But
it's a great example because they're such a large apartment builder primarily. And I don't know if that trend may have been started. In fact, I'm not sure who came first, Gables or Post Properties. The Post Properties put a lot of emphasis on the aesthetics, but that meant beautiful trees as well on the property. But both those developers have done a good job maintaining the aesthetics.
But you were asking us about cities around the state that are doing great jobs, large and small.
Mary Lynne, hold that thought. Okay, we're going to be taking a break. When we come back, you can start off by telling us about any cities, or Seth, you can talk about what you know is going on in the state, because hopefully, as we talked about, there are cities around the country and around the world who are going to learn from what we're talking about. We're here with Mary Lynne Beckley of the Georgia Tree Council and Seth Hawkins of the Georgia Forestry Council, or Commission rather. We'll be back with Mary Lynne and Seth right after this break.
This is David Donaldson with the Atlanta Healing Center, conveniently located in Lawrenceville, Georgia. At AHC, your success is our goal. Addiction recovery is about more than just not using. It's about becoming a whole person and addressing all aspects of your physical, psychological, and social needs. Please call us at 770-696-9862, or you can reach us on the web at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
If your health insurance premium is more than your mortgage, Ellen Deal with Ideal Solutions is here to help. Whether you're a small business owner, individual, family, or baby boomer, email maga45cag@gmail.com and I'll respond with 3 easy questions to help you determine if you can get away from Obamacare. As a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry, I'm here to help with all your insurance needs. Email Ellen Deal at maga45cag@gmail.com.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the americasbroadcastnetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to the Business Hour. We're here with Mary Lynne Beckley of the Georgia Tree Council and Seth Hawkins of the Georgia Forestry Commission. And we've been talking about what some communities are doing to preserve trees. And there are actually communities, some of whom have been awarded by the Georgia Tree Council, communities and also specific commercial companies, because, as I mentioned off the air, some companies used to just go in and clear the land. It was an easier blank canvas to work with, but more and more are becoming aware that they should cut fewer and fewer trees. And Seth, you were talking about a company in Jefferson City.
So the city of Jefferson, Georgia, they're right there on the I-85 corridor, and they're just having rapid growth. All of Jackson County really is. And Jefferson's done a great job working with those warehouses coming in, and specifically Kubota Tractors has a factory over there. And they've done a great job of working with those businesses and those companies to make sure that trees that can be left are left and wooded areas are left that can be. And also trees are replaced when they're taken out. And that helps the community as a whole, because the more tree canopy you have in a community, we all share that benefit. But also the companies are starting to realize that having trees on their complexes and their properties and their campuses really behooves them, not only just from a public perspective point of view, but also for their actual employees' health and their employees' quality of life. Insurance costs and healthcare costs go down for businesses when they have treed campuses and treed corporate campuses and things.
Seth, let's go down that path a little further, because you probably talk about this to various audiences around the state. Tell us about the environmental health benefits. I know, for example, that Georgia pine trees, have been given a bad rap. Yet, even Georgia pine trees, those needles help to scrub the air and make it a little cleaner. And so they're one species who otherwise has been given that bad rap, but is really good for the environment. Tell us about some of the other species and some of the other benefits of reducing temperatures, and what is it that you talk about when you share with communities the benefits of holding on to their trees?
So we could talk for the rest of the hour about benefits of trees.
We'll just touch on the highlights.
So 2/3 of the state of Georgia is covered in forest, and that's counting your actual timber forest, your recreational forest, national forest. But 2/3 of the land area of Georgia is covered in forest. It's about almost a 50-50 split between pine and hardwood, depending on what part of the state you're in. One or more of the other is more prevalent. But trees, obviously those trees have their role they play in watershed management and hydrology and all that stuff. But when we start talking about kind of socioeconomic and health benefits of trees, that's when we really start to focus in on urban and community trees and community forests. There's more and more research coming out all the time of how they can actually quantify these health benefits and these socioeconomic benefits. They've done studies and research proving that folks that can simply see a tree at their hospital window have shorter recovery times from surgeries and diseases. They've proven that people just going and immersing themselves in green space for even 10-15 minutes a day helps their mental and emotional well-being, helps them with their physical health as well. So there's all sorts of new research coming out all the time about those kinds of things, about the financial benefits of trees. They've done studies. People will actually come from further to shop at a business that has trees out front. They will pay more for parking. They'll spend more time in the store, spend more on goods while they're there. So it behooves business owners as well to have trees.
And whereas it used to be that among retailers they thought, got to hold on to all the parking spaces that we possibly can, which really was aimed at the shopping season, the holiday season, they now realize, we can put a few trees or leave a few trees in our parking lots for the very reason you just cited.
And the silver bullet's when you can leave larger trees when you're doing developments. It's great to plant trees back and replace them, but we really get exponential benefits. Those health and socio-economic benefits really are exponential with larger trees. So the more tree save areas we can have on developments and larger trees we can leave in place, just amplifies all those benefits.
A few years back, the Sandy Spring Conservancy, tip of the hat to the Conservancy here, hosted its annual dinner and had its keynote speaker, Ed McMahon from the Urban Land Institute, and he talked about how we were aware that when you had a a golf course, which is essentially green space, albeit manicured and mowed, that it increased the property values of the homes. Of course, those homes were generally luxury homes, but he said, we then discovered that if you had a green space and there was no golf course, it increased the property value of the homes around the green space.
Absolutely.
So I think what you're saying is that applies even to commercial area as well.
Yeah. So trees will increase home values or commercial property values as well. Yeah.
They also save, trees planted near homes and buildings save on energy costs. Air conditioning in the summer, if you have a tree planted near your unit and at your home or in proximity to it, will save you on those costs. But back to the health, that is the most. We're so connected to trees. Studies have shown that there are fewer childhood asthma cases for cities that have trees. Children can experience trees in green space. Kids with ADD and behavioral issues and that sort of thing do better both inside and outside when they have time, to spend out under the trees.
Do we know, Mary Lynne, have there been any studies on specific properties? Because we know collectively if the forest is healthier in a given community, maybe even a neighborhood, that you could literally breathe easier, children with asthma, because of the air scrubbing properties of trees, both trees with needles and trees with leaves. But do we know that on a specific site, I guess if it's big enough, large enough in terms of acreage, are people able to derive the benefits of cleaner air on a specific property?
Yeah. So the U.S. Forest Service has an entire suite of software called iTree. So there's, I think, 8 or 9 different pieces of software within that: iTree Canopy, iTree Hydro, Eco Design. They go on and on. And one of the main functions of that software is to evaluate tree canopy or tree benefits in a community and actually put that into a dollar value. So the U.S. Forest Service has done a lot of work and that's one of the air quality benefits has been one of their biggest milestones in being able to actually achieve that valuation. There's really very well researched dollar values tied to the actual amount of air pollution cleaning that trees can do.
We were going to get into that later, but why not talk about it now? iTree is a fantastic software system that, as you say, can help evaluate on a few different levels the benefits of trees, so that and I simply saw a demonstration. I'm not trained, and you probably are, but to some extent, because it's relatively new. But you can calculate the value of various trees specifically because you're talking about aerial imagery that helps to, or mapping of trees, so you can talk about the value of the trees collectively, but also what happens when you remove them, what happens moving into the future as they mature. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think the best one to kind of talk what you're talking about for the individual homeowner for a small area, iTree Design. If you Google iTree Design, it'll be the first hit. It's a web-based software. You can go in, basically look on an air photo, draw the boundaries of your home, and then you can go out and take some basic measurements of the trees around your home and input that and place those on that air photo. And it'll give you back a bunch of results about the energy savings you're getting from those trees, the air pollution cleaning, stormwater benefits, all those things. And it'll give you today's numbers, and you can also project it out for up to 100 years. So you can really start to see, if I plant a 2-inch caliper tree today, in 50 years, how much this is really going to be giving back to the community and ecosystem services. So,
we haven't even touched much on erosion, but if you live in a hilly community like most of metro Atlanta, the larger region, or the state for that matter, when you have clear cutting and nothing but a big lawn in front and a big lawn in the back, there's not a lot of water retention, and there's all sorts of problems that you can avoid if you have trees in place.
Yeah.
And Mary Lynne, I wanted to ask you if some of your members, and Seth, you might have worked with some of those very members, what a good thing for a homeowner to do is, if you're going to be taking down some trees, to be working probably with one of your members that engages iTree in helping to assess. I think they're just becoming aware of it as well. But I know the demonstration I saw was Davy Tree, I believe, and so there are some tree cutting companies that actually you can engage.
Yes, we always tell homeowners, if you want to have anything done with trees in your yard, consult an arborist, an ISA certified arborist. That stands for International Society of Arboriculture. So someone who's certified in arboriculture, have them come and just take a look at your trees, consult with you, talk. You can ask them questions, and then. Yes, that you mentioned some really good company, a good company there. What else would you tell homeowners, Seth?
So yeah, definitely employ the services of a certified arborist. Especially when you're talking about taking care of an existing tree, because arborists are in the business of taking care and keeping trees alive rather than just removal. So definitely that's the first step. Now, if that arborist does go the extra step and uses some iTree software and stuff, that's great. Because all that does is give you more information to kind of tout how great and the benefits are for those trees you have. And, that's a great step to take. But, really, it's hard to go wrong with planting trees as long as you're putting the right tree in the right place. So we talk about that a lot.
Can a individual homeowner or a business owner engage the Georgia Forestry Commission at all? Are you available to help with any assessments?
So the Georgia Forestry Commission, we can't do on-site assessments on private property, on private or commercial property, but we have a website called Ask the Arborist. You can go on there, any homeowner, business owner, you fill out a little form online. It'll send the question to us. You can attach pictures and all that good stuff. So that's kind of our approach to being able to help private property owners, is to arm them with as much information as possible and some references to ISA arborists, so then they can go into the situation with as much info as possible and make the most informed decision.
And I believe y'all have a list of arborists on your website as well.
We do.
And another organization that is a good good resource for finding an arborist is the Georgia Arborist Association. So you can go to georgiaarborist.org, spelled out GEORGIA, arborist.org, and look at their membership, and you can find an arborist. But I always tell homeowners, if you have a home and you have a yard and you have trees, budget for tree care, because those are living organisms and you need to keep an eye on them.
We're going to be taking a break. When we come back, we'll drill down a little bit further and talk about some of your members and how they probably all have certified arborists, I would imagine, or at least the tree-focused organizations. We're here with Mary Lynne Beckley, the Executive Director of the Georgia Tree Council, and Seth Hawkins, a forester with the Georgia Forestry Commission. We'll be back to talk more with them right after this break.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
Hi, this is Ron Comacho, host of the Business Hour on America's Web Radio. If you'd like to hear an eclectic mix of great programs, from relationships with Dr. Ann Schubert to homegrown veggies, and from classic cars to the Constitution, we've got programs for discerning listeners at www.americaswebradio.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Okay.
You could even move your chair a little. Welcome back to the Business Hour. I'm Ron Comacho, your host. We're here with Mary Lynne Beckley, the Executive Director of the Georgia Tree Council, and Seth Hawkins, a community forester with the Georgia Forestry Commission. And we've been talking about what individual homeowners, business owners, and communities are doing these days to help protect their trees. And we're going to be talking a little bit about tree restoration as well. In light of the fires on the West Coast, I want to have Seth share with us a little bit about what kinds of things are being discussed for the long-term health of forests as it relates to forest fires. But also, Mary Lynne wanted to reiterate about the value of trees in retaining stormwater, and water retention, and as an anti-erosion technique.
It's just one of the major benefits, the many benefits of trees. They are natural stormwater managers for us. If you take down all the trees and you replace it with concrete and rooftops and everything, the trees, the water has nowhere to go. And so it can result in flooding and all sorts of problems. There is a statistic about types of trees and how much water that they retain in their canopy. Deciduous trees, I believe, retain about 20% of the rain in their canopy, the rainfall in their canopy, and conifers about 30%. So
conifers being pine trees.
Yes, and so see right there, they're managing a lot of the and they use that rain, and then everything, those resulting benefits from that, cleaning the water and et cetera. But if there's hard surfaces, impervious surface down there and no trees, then the water just, where does it go?
That's right. In fact, Seth came up with a fantastic gee whiz number. I want you to share that again, Seth. We were off the air, but tell us about the ability of a tree to absorb water.
Yeah. So as Mary Lynne said, unfortunately, whenever there is clearing of trees, the majority of the time what goes in back in that spot is impervious surface, concrete, asphalt, that kind of thing. So an inch of rain on an acre of pavement generates over 27,000 gallons of runoff, just right there going right into the storm drain. However, an acre of forest can take up 28,000 gallons of water in a day, easily, no problem. So it seems it's a heck of a coincidence that those numbers are so close, right? So you take out, so it's really a double compounded problem when we clear forest canopy in urban and community environments. Then we're not only taking away that ability of the soil to take that much water and handle that much water, we're also putting pavement down and running all that 27,000 gallons of water right into the storm drain to have to deal with.
Seth, I wanted you to take a moment to talk about the mission, and we've touched upon it. Maybe you could summarize again the mission of the Georgia Tree Commission, and also about your role as a forester, a community forester.
Yeah, so I'm a community forester with the Georgia Forestry Commission. Again, so we use the term community forestry rather than urban forestry, just to try to get away from that discrepancy of people thinking urban meant Centennial Park or Olympic Park or something, because I work with communities as big as Atlanta or all the way down to our smallest tree city of Comacho with 125 people. So we work with community, so that's why we use community forestry. My main role really within the state, there's three community field foresters that work just, are thirds of the state, mainly working with communities, cities, counties, universities, civic organizations, schools, K through 12 campuses, just basically whatever their tree goals are, whether that be to plant more trees or to care for the trees they have. We do a lot of training and outreach with like public works staff and communities, helping them learn how to care for trees better. But pretty much we're just kind of backup for city and county governments and civic groups and their tree goals throughout the state.
You mentioned schools, and schools are communities of sorts, that expand and contract, with the student population during the daytime. Universities, of course, are communities that expand and contract given the school year, but they're communities. And are there how are the Georgia colleges and universities doing as far as you're concerned? Are they playing catch up with sustainability as it relates to trees, or are they doing pretty good?
I've actually found that the majority of universities in the state actually are kind of leaders in the sustainability department because they've realized, they've seen the research, they see the writing on the wall of all the benefits that green space and trees provide. Also, it's kind of a competition factor between universities. The look of a campus, the feel, the environmental practices of a campus can be driving factors of why a student might choose one school over another. So the universities in the state have actually been leaders in that department. There's a program called Tree Campus USA, where it's through the Arbor Day Foundation, and we actually have 21 universities in the state of Georgia certified as Tree Campus universities.
Wow.
The Georgia Tree Council, in partnership with the Forestry Commission, presents our annual campus canopy conference every year in September, and we've had this conference for about, I think the first one was in 2010, and we present that we're hosted by a different campus every year, and they love to have us and showcase their campuses to the other attending campuses that come. But that conference is not just for college and university campus personnel, but also any type of campus, a corporate campus, maybe a botanical garden, K through 12 campus. So I just wanted to put that conference out there for folks.
And I know, Mary Lynne, you like to remain somewhat impartial in these matters, but give us the name of some of the campuses that have won awards that are leaders in this respect.
Agnes Scott College. It has a wonderful campus arboretum, and folks can go online and go to the Agnes Scott Arboretum and take an online tour of their arboretum, or of course go in person and tour it. But so many of our other campuses are doing excellent work. Emory University has a beautiful campus. UGA does great work. University of North Georgia. I'm trying to think of all the different campuses that we've been to.
And you mentioned UNG, so Agnes Scott and UGA and all those ones you mentioned, they do a wonderful job of the arboretum feel on their campuses, and so does UNG and places like Georgia College State University in Milledgeville. But also some of the schools like UNG and GCSU do a great job of student engagement, and that's something that's really a big part of the Tree Campus program, or student service learning projects, things like that. The University of North Georgia helps a lot of smaller communities do crowdsourced tree inventories. Georgia College State University does a lot of tree planting initiatives using students, so they learn to plant and care for trees. So the Tree Campus program is really awesome in the fact that you get all the student engagement and the recognition for those schools for their hard work.
Hopefully we're fostering legions of foresters and arborists. Let's talk about Tree City USA. But one of the things that you help the Tree City USA program do is help to certify cities. So let's talk about what it takes to become a Tree City USA, and what are some of the good examples in Georgia.
I'll start by saying the Tree City USA is a program of the Arbor Day Foundation, which is the national urban community forestry nonprofit organization. And so they have a Tree City USA program, Tree Campus USA, Tree Line USA. And so the Georgia Forestry Commission, I'll throw this over to Seth, they are the coordinators or the administrators for those programs here in Georgia. And so there are some standards that they have to meet.
Yeah. So the Tree City USA program is a national recognition program, basically so that communities can get some recognition and networking and support for the hard work they're already doing. Most communities are already doing. So there's 4 main standards that a community has to have in place to be a tree city. They have to have a tree ordinance. They have to have a volunteer tree board or a designated tree department. They have to have an Arbor Day celebration. and they have to have documentation of $2 per capita of sweat equity being spent on trees. I know it's kind of wordy, but that's really because they use the word budget on the Tree City website, and that kind of almost implies $2 more per capita, but it's $2 per capita of sweat equity documented. And that can be anything from leaf and limb pickup to tree pruning to watering to planting programs. But they have those 4 standards in place, and they just have to reapply each year. And you get recognition materials. And beyond just the physical materials you get, like I said, you also start to build a relationship with your community forester and with the Georgia Tree Council. And it really kind of opens the doors to a bigger world for that community.
Mm-hmm. There are 163 Tree City USAs in Georgia as of 2018. There may be a few more now this year. There, as Seth said, there are 21 Tree Campus USA colleges and universities, and there is one Tree Line USA, and that would be a utility company, and that would be the Georgia Power Company. They are a Tree Line USA company.
What does Tree Line mean?
Tree Line, so they have the Tree City. Started off with the Tree City program, then Tree Campus was a spinoff, and now they have Tree Line, which is another spinoff program. Same, it's a recognition program, but for utility companies, for power utility companies.
And Seth, you had mentioned that there was some data being generated about this city where the station is based in Sandy Springs in North Metro Atlanta. And I know that Sandy Springs is trying to do some things which keep it on the leading edge of maintaining its tree canopy. You had talked about a breakdown of council districts, and this might be helpful to any cities listening. Tell us a little bit, give us a profile of what that analysis is.
Yeah, so the city of Sandy Springs approached another one of our community foresters about doing an iTree canopy project, basically a canopy assessment for the city. They didn't want to just know the overall percentage for the entire city. They kind of wanted to break down, so we broke it down by the 6 council districts and then also the central business district, and did individual iTree canopy assessments for those 7 pieces of the city. And so what they found is, depending on which district you're in, it ranged from 49% to 69% tree canopy coverage, which is outstanding. And the central business district had 24%, which for a CBD is actually pretty high. It's pretty good. And they kind of wanted that just so they could kind of map where their higher needs are, where they need to focus on planting in public space, finding spots so they can put more trees near the right-of-way for the community to share.
One of the reasons that the tree canopy is pretty healthy in Sandy Springs is that we have 20 miles which borders the Chattahoochee River, and that something which is true for many communities throughout Georgia and the Atlanta metro area is this vast network of creeks and streams. Is that part of why you have water sources for a healthy tree canopy?
There could be a lot of factors going on there. I mean, I think definitely when you have your waterways, you have restrictions on how much you can clear or at all clear near those streams. So you're automatically going to have those protected streamside management zones and buffers. You'll have that in place. But there's a lot of factors that go into that. Just the total community as a goal. A community is going to have the tree canopy percentage that it wants. The voters are going to dictate what actions are taken to drive tree canopy percent. So it's really a reflection of the constituency and what they really want.
So the watershed just is a supportive mechanism, if you will, but it's the people
It's part of the urban forest.
Right, who determine whether or not you're going to leverage that.
Right.
We're going to be taking a break. We're here with Mary Lynne Beckley, the Executive Director of the Georgia Tree Council, and Seth Hawkins, and Community Forester with the Georgia Forestry Commission. We'll be back to talk with Mary Lynne and Seth right after this break.
Want to ace your upcoming survey exam? The NLC Prep Combo has everything you need to help you crush your upcoming FS, PS, Florida PSM, California PLS, or Texas RPLS exam. Combos include a full-length practice exam book with the same number of questions and category types as the actual exam, a pre-programmed HP35 with 17 programs to solve those time-consuming equations such as COGO, triangles, traverses, and more in seconds. A complete online course is included that covers every topic of the exam with videos, workbooks, quizzes, and a full-length practice exam that simulates the computer-based format of the FS and PS exam. That gives you not just one, but 2 full-length practice exams to help fully prepare you for test day. Visit us at nlcprep.com for more information and let us help you crush your exams.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
You can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan, and every family will save thousands of dollars a year. I'm Ellen Deal, and if you've been hurt by the Affordable Care Act, you can email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com to see if we can help. Small business owners, individuals, families, and baby boomers, email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com for 3 easy questions to determine if you can get away from Obamacare. I'm a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry and here to help you for all your insurance needs.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to the Business Hour. I'm Ron Comacho, your host, and we're here with Mary Lynne Beckley, the Executive Director of the Georgia Tree Council, and Seth Hawkins, the Community Forester with the Georgia Forestry Commission. Seth, tell us what your full title is.
Let's see if I can get it right. Northeast Georgia Regional Community Forester for the Sustainable Community Forestry Program of the Georgia Forestry Commission.
Phew.
That's a mouthful. Better for you to say than me. Also, we had been dancing around green infrastructure, which is really one way of referring to this umbrella topic. And you were talking about how Georgia fares with the rest of the country. That was also kind of a gee whiz number, and through no small part of your 2 organizations. Tell us what that number is.
So in 2008, Georgia Tech did a study, a canopy survey of the city of Atlanta, right? And we have 47% canopy, which is one of the tops, if not the top, of major cities in the United States.
You said 2008, not 18?
That was in 2008.
Okay.
But then move forward to 2018, U.S. Forest Service did a report on just basically the overall loss percentage of urban tree canopy state by state. And 45 of the 50 states are all losing urban tree canopy percentage overall in the state. And Georgia actually was in the top 5 for percentage loss. So whereas we have one of the best templates to work with, we also need to realize that, the ball that we haven't
got to step
run
up.
out of the woods yet.
So to speak. No pun intended.
So part of our mission at the Georgia Tree Council, which includes the Forestry Commission and lots of other organizations that are members and participate, is to to endeavor to make sure that all Georgia communities have a healthy, thriving community forest. And so we know that there are lots of communities out there across the state that should be at our conferences and should be participating in our programs, so that they can be on top of all the latest research and all the latest resources on how to keep that urban forest thriving. So that kind of is a.
And when is that conference?
So our state conference is November 7th and 8th, which is next week, here in Stone Mountain. We're a statewide group, so we present this conference around the state every year. We are in a different location every year so that we can be close in all quadrants of the state. And this year, if you don't mind, I'll tell you what the theme is. I brought the agenda so that I don't miss anything. Well, I thought I did. Anyway, it's the theme of the conference this year is Trees and Equity, Community Collaboration, and Building the Future Workforce. And so we are focusing this year on examining and discussing and sharing not only why urban green space and trees are important for every community, every neighborhood in Georgia. Every neighborhood and every city needs to have access to trees and green space. But also that many diverse populations and younger folks need to learn about these careers that they can have in tree care and natural resources. We're looking for the future. We've got to start that succession planning and bringing those younger people and, like I said, diverse populations into learning about tree care and taking care of their urban forests, and that will help build these thriving green spaces.
I might add that some of you are watching and others of you are listening to two people who embody those careers related to the sustainability of green infrastructure.
Yeah.
And also, I would be remiss, because I know there's a lot of listeners out there thinking about, wow, we're talking about healthy tree forests and how beautiful they are and how they do all these great things. And yet we know that there's trees that have been burning and whole thousands and thousands of acres and hundreds of square miles of decimated trees and structures, and people's lives at risk, and especially the responders, the firefighters, and everyone else. And I want to acknowledge that there are some brave men and women that are helping from all over the West and the U.S. that have traveled to California and the Rocky Mountain area to help with those fires. But Seth, can you offer kind of a very top the line overview of the kinds of things that communities will be needing to do more of to maintain healthy tree forests? And even as we have lightning and sparks that are set off by the energy grid and automobiles and forest fires, because we know that the majority of these fires begin generally with some human action. Tell us about maintaining healthy forests.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that go into that.
I know we're doing the whole program, but just an overview.
Yeah, and in Georgia and the Southeast kind of in general, we're lucky in the fact that we get to do what we call prescribed burning on a regular basis. It's more embraced in our part of the country. Also, it's just safer to do in the Southeast. We have many more days that it's safe to do a prescribed burn. And so what the function of that is kind of cleaning out the fuel load out of the forest floor. So when you get in some situations like out west, unfortunately, the weather isn't conducive, the topography is not conducive to prescribed fire, so they get a lot of heavy fuel buildup, things like that. They have a lot of more variable and gusty and high wind speeds than we do. So we're lucky that our climate in the Southeast allows us to do some of that practice prescribed burning, and that helps reduce fuel loads. But honestly, the biggest thing that we can do as a communities to help spread the word and reduce wildfire risk are just getting the word out to folks about debris burning safety and campfire safety. The number one cause of wildfires in the state of Georgia is escaped debris burning, unpermitted escaped debris burns. So people would burn a debris pile on a day when it's not safe, it's too dry, the wind's too gusty, and embers can carry up to a mile in severe drought. In the beginning of this month, until we got all this rain, we were actually drier now than we were in October of 16 when we had all the wildfires. So luckily this rain came at just the right time. But yeah, from a public education program is really the best thing a community can do to reduce that wildfire risk. There's also many things that individual neighborhoods and homeowners can do. They can go to a website called firewise.org. It's sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, and there's tons of information, tips, and techniques there of how you can firewise your home through landscaping, certain things, cleaning your gutters out, not keeping your wood pile next to the propane tank under the wooden porch, that kind of thing. Little things like that can go a whole long way. They can go on firewise.org, find a lot of information for individual homeowners. But from a community perspective, really the best thing we can do is public education.
Mary Lynne, how did you get involved in tree preservation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because when I went to college, I majored in English. I got a master's in English. So, but when I got out, I found myself in getting into nonprofit management. And I worked for 17 years in the arts at Callan Wald Fine Arts Center here in Atlanta for 17 years and did a little bit of everything, publicity, marketing. I was there so long I got to do a little bit of everything. And then around 2005 or so, I thought, I I want to stay in nonprofit management, but I want to change my mission. I want to change the hat I wear. And I thought I really want to work for the environment. And this job opening came up, and I went for it, and it has been a joy. It has been so rewarding.
Probably something that's easy to wake up to every day, isn't it?
Absolutely. I am a total advocate of nonprofit work. I'd love to spend an hour talking to you about that, about good standards of nonprofit management.
We'll have to have you come back and do that.
All right.
Because I'm going to ask Seth how you got started in working in green infrastructure.
Yeah, and I'd like to say we are so lucky that Mary Lynne found the Georgia Tree Council, because I couldn't imagine that if you were still in the art world, I'm sure they'd be better for it, but I'm glad we
Thank you, Seth.
So I got into community forestry. I went to the University of Georgia Warnell School of Forestry. Got my bachelor's in forest resources from there. And so I wasn't really specialized in community forestry or arboriculture. And I just worked some internships in my senior year and out of school, and found that this is where my heart really lied. Again, I had the forestry degree, knew about silviculture and timber management and all that, and that's the biggest industry in the state, and it's wonderful, but I just really found my heart drawn to community forestry.
But as a young boy, when did this whole thing begin?
I actually...
was it a love for the woods?
I've always spent a lot of time outside. I've always been an avid gardener. I was a 10-year-old volunteer with Master Gardeners when I was a little kid and stuff. I've always been outside playing in the dirt and stuff.
Yeah.
I really just found my niche and found an opportunity where I felt like I could really make a difference. So
It would seem you are perfectly suited for what you do.
Oh, listen.
In many ways.
Thank you.
He is.
Do either of you have any advice for young people who are thinking about careers in this area?
I think it is one of the best choices they can make for the future, because, with all the changes going on, we really need to take care of our environment and our planet and our communities. And as we've discussed this past hour, the health and benefits, the environmental benefits, the et cetera, all the benefits of healthy trees and healthy urban forests are so important, and we need more people than ever on board taking care of that. So,
Seth, do you have anything to
and
of a very young student or a young professional?
Yeah, and I feel like as Mary Lynne was saying, as things move forward, I think the writing's on the wall that this is all more important than we've ever realized. And I think the younger generation coming up is really discovering that, that green industry jobs are there, and they're cool. It's great. For young folks that want to start learning about it more, there's all sorts of opportunities in the metro area. They can get involved with Trees Atlanta. There's also internship programs through the commission, but the UGA School of Forestry actually has a new urban forestry emphasis. So if people are really interested in it, they can go to UGA and
check that out.
Well, I want to thank you both. We've been talking to Mary Lynne Beckley, the Executive Director of the Georgia Tree Council, Seth Hawkins, Community Forester with the Georgia Forestry Commission. Thank you so much for being on the program and for offering some insight.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Business Hour here at America's Web Radio, or on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. We'll see you on the radio and internet next week.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
You can